My name is Joseph Hennebury.
What is your connection to Belmont as a young lad?
Came here when I was 2 years old and have been here ever since, except for my 4 years in the Marine Corps.
You went to Belmont High School, I assume, right?
Yes, I graduated in 1961.
All right, and you went, everybody remembers the day that they went into the service. What day was that, sir?
September 29th, 1964.
Excellent.
Being 21, and most of my peers were 16 or 17, and country boys, it didn't go that well. My first day, when you go to Paris Island, it is an island with a long causeway, and they bring you in there at 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the morning. And we flew into Beaufort, and then we get on this school bus, and we drive up to the main gate, and as we're going through the main gate, the bus driver says, "You'll be sorry." And then the next words out of his mouth was, "When we pull up in front of receiving barracks, make sure you get off this bus quickly." And as we pull up in front of receiving barracks, the bus stops, and this huge black drill instructor who filled the front of the bus said, "Welcome to Paris Island, get off this bus." And he used some colorful language. So I opened the window, hopped out the window because he was throwing people off out the front door. And boot camp always a challenge because I wasn't an athlete in high school. But since I had already an associate's degree, they made me the school teacher. So what did that mean? That meant the week that you're supposed to do mess duty, I didn't do mess duty. What I did was I would tutor my fellow Marines on Marine Corps history so they could pass. So basically, my whole 4 years in the Marine Corps, I never did mess duty. And when I graduated, I was very fortunate. 10% out of all recruits are made PFCs out of boot camp, people they consider leaders. So I made PFC out of boot camp, and when I was discharged, I was, as you put it, a buck sergeant, E5. So I moved up fairly quickly. I went to Camp Lejeune, Camp Geiger, as part of Camp Lejeune for ITR, Infantry Training Regiment. And then they took about 300 of us, and they shipped us to Camp Pendleton, California, where I stuck out like a sore thumb because of my complexion and my size. I'm not very large. And when my MOS was determined there at Camp Pendleton by a gunnery sergeant. I was an 03 infantry, but I didn't have any specialty. And we were standing in formation at Margarita in Camp Pendleton, and this gunnery sergeant looking up and down the line, and he comes to me and he said, "Hennebury, we're going to make you a machine gunner, boy." And I said, "Gunny, I'm the smallest one here." I said, "What about all these other guerrillas? You know, that's a crew-served weapon. You have to carry the ammo and everything." He says, "Hell, boy, you're small." I said, "I know that. You don't have to remind me of that. But what's that got to do with anything? Hell, when you open up, everybody's going to try and kill you, and you'll make a small target." He was correct, and I'm still here today. So I ended up in machine guns.
What'd you carry then? The M60 or what was?
M60.
Yeah. How many rounds did you go out with in the belt?
Basically, I would have 300 rounds.
A lot of weight.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's why I'm small. The rest of the Marines are your size, large.
Yeah. more places to hit.
Right.
Anyway,
Violating one of the basic Marine Corps rules was my proudest moment in the Corps.
what was that?
Coming home on a weekend before we were shipped to Vietnam.
So you went AWOL? Technically.
Technically, I convinced one of the men I went through boot camp with, Private Joseph Drew, who was 17, just about ready to turn 18. As I said, I was 21. I was an old man. That we're going to fly home for the weekend. And he said, but we can get in trouble. I said, how much more trouble can we get in? They're going to send us to a country we don't know anything about. The people are going to try and kill us, and I guarantee you they're emptying out the brakes. Mm-hmm. Oh, I said, we're flying home this weekend. That's it. We did. Didn't get in trouble. As a matter of fact, Captain Rushing, our company commander, we were in formation before loading onto the 6 spies to go down to San Diego and get on board ship. Yeah. We went over on board ship. Yeah. He said to me, he said, Hennebury, how was Boston? I said, fine, sir. Mm-hmm. He said, I'm glad you went. And I'm glad, too, because Joe Drew was killed over there. Mm. And when I came back almost 2 years later, his family thanked me for bringing him home. Oh. So that's my proudest accomplishment. Oh. They have a scholarship at the Woburn Boys Club for him.
Last person killed in Vietnam was a Marine from Woburn. McMahon, I think.
Yes.
He had another Marine. The last 2 people killed were Marines.
We made an amphibious assault into Vietnam. Mm-hmm. We were the 2nd Marine Unit. We're on board ship, ready to go down the nets into the landing craft. We're going down in groups. Anyhow, up come the MPs with 8 Marines in irons. They unlocked them, gave them an M14, haversack, and said, over the side. They had emptied out the brig at Camp Pendleton and brought them there. You know why Marines are such good fighters?
No, why?
They can't swim. When we hit the beach, we were all happy to get off that ship. It was 22 days, tough going, okay? And it's around 6 o'clock in the morning, and you're standing there on solid ground. All right. And the opposing team opens up on us, and if you had a video camera, you would have seen 200 men go, how the hell can I get out of here? Well, the landing craft are gone, so you better fight because you can't swim that far. We were just north of Da Nang, okay, and our job was to basically clear out the Viet Cong that were mortaring the Da Nang Air Base. Yep. Which, I'll flash forward, our company executive officer, we connected with him just by accident down in D.C. Our original mission was to get off the ship and get in these small Mike boats and go up the, I think it was the Haiphong River, anyhow, up to Wei to attack. Now, we were a battalion, but take one company and attack 2,000 Viet Cong. But fortunately, some Viet Cong decided to mortar the air base at Da Nang, so we didn't go on that mission, because if we did, I wouldn't be here today. We would all wiped out. We were around Da Nang, okay, and basically clearing out the Viet Cong, taking casualties, inflicting casualties, and then, well, at the time, being an old man, okay, I kind of pushed against authority. And the weapons platoon sergeant, his name was Sergeant Dow, he was only about 2 years older than I was. He was a career Marine. He had me doing punishment duty in combat to change my attitude, digging holes 6 by 6 by 6 with an entrenching tool and filling them back up. Well, it was November of '65. I'm told I'm being transferred to L33. And I thought he was getting rid of me, okay? Because again, we challenged each other. Well, again, history is a little different when you talk to the person later. 25 years later, I reconnected with him, and I was having dinner at his house in Fulton, Arizona. And I said, Sergeant Dow, you must have been so happy to get rid of me. Tears start coming down his face. I said, oh, those are tears of joy. He said, I didn't want to get rid of you. I said, really? He said, no. But L33, this was after Operation Starlight, had taken a lot of casualties. So he said, you were an expert with a .45, M14, M60, and you're great with a knife and not a fork, so that's why I sent you down there. I said, oh, so you weren't trying to get rid of me. He said, no. I said, well, that's good to know now. So I continued with 3-3. I was wounded in Operation Harvest Moon. I had second and third degree burns from the knees down. Anyhow, so they shipped me to the Naval Hospital in Guam, patched me up, and shipped me back with 2 of my fellow Marines from L33. And we reported back into Vietnam. There's a Quonset hut there. And you had your service record jacket. Remember the manila folder with your shot record, pay record, etc.?
Except you carried it yourself, you can get rid of whatever you wanted to get rid of.
Right. So the first one was Bob Nina, PFC Bob Nina. He went to the corporal, didn't have computers then, this is '66, January '66. And he writes, instead of L33, he writes on Bob's service record jacket, I think F29, but a different unit. And same on Paul Mayer's. And so they start moaning and groaning, so I said, get outside and shut up. I was a corporal at the time. So mine, he wrote the same thing on mine. I said, Corporal, do you have a pencil with a good eraser? He said, oh, certainly, Corporal. So I took it, went outside, erased F29 on all 3 jackets, put L33 on it, went back in, gave him the pencil, and I said, where's the field phone? He said, over there. So we ended up back at L33.
Wow.
We wanted to go back to our unit.
Yeah.
So I continued. When I came back from being wounded, many of the men that I served with had been wounded and had been shipped home. So I had a whole new group, but we worked together well, and then I finished up my time in Vietnam, and I was very fortunate. I got orders to MBBNS, Marine Barracks, Boston Naval Shipyard.
Oh.
So I finished my last tour of duty in the Marine Corps right here in Boston.
Wow.
And a double wow. A buddy of mine that I had known in boot camp, I was checking the gates because now I was up for E5, and I see this civilian in a Navy government car. So I pull it over. I said, what the hell? His name was Chris Stathlopoulos. I said, what the hell are you doing in this Navy car? He said, oh, I'm the Admiral's driver. I said, what's that? He said, hop in. So he takes me to the 3-room apartment on base that he had. I said, boy, this is pretty good duty. He said, yeah, I've got my orders to go to Vietnam. He said, would you like to apply for it? I said, well, it looks pretty nice. He said, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, you're on call. I said, yeah, what the heck? So I was interviewed, and I was selected, and I was very fortunate. We'll just put it at that.
How long did you do that for?
A year, about a year and 4 months. I came back to Belmont area, and I went to Boston University, went through in 3 years, and at the same time, I started working up at the Metropolitan State Hospital as an attendant in 1969. And again, as I told you, I joined the Marine Corps to avoid the draft, and I realized that there were other alternatives. I'm up there working, and one evening we went out to the old Continental Cafe.
Oh, sure. I grew up across the street from it.
Okay. The Conti for
The Conti, across the street from my house, right?
Yeah, for a few beers. And so we're sitting there talking. It was a good group of young men. And they said, Joe, are you doing alternative service? I said, alternative service? What's that? Well, we all are. I said, what does that mean? Well, if you work at a state hospital for 2 years, okay, you won't be drafted. I said, oh, that's interesting. One of them said, well, what are you going to do about the draft? I said, oh, I took care of it. How'd you do that? I said, oh, I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps. Well, I worked there full time at a small rubbish removal business. Graduated. Before I graduated, I was thinking about making a career out of the Marine Corps. But in boot camp, they tell you, if we wanted you to have a wife and family, we would have issued you one. And they proved it, believe me. And so I got engaged, got married, and so no career in the Marine Corps, but happy to be married. And I started working for the federal government at the CB Center down in Davisville, Rhode Island. Continued working at the Met to pay off my student loans. As a matter of fact, this Labor Day, it'll be 48 years that I've been working in the business. I worked at the Met for 5 years, and it'll be 43 years up at McLean. I'll be working there this evening. I was fortunate, okay? My federal job, the good part and the bad part was business travel.
Sure, yeah.
Okay? So I traveled all over the country. So instead of partying in the evening, I would get the phone book and start calling around to reconnect with my buddies. So I did throughout the country. So we have biannual reunions now.
Great.
So I've been very fortunate.
You were doing that long before Facebook was doing it, right?
Oh,
Really?
absolutely, absolutely. And I'll connect one thing, my careers and my buddies. It was about 28 years ago now. We had a reunion here in Boston.
Oh.
Each one of us hosts the reunion. And so we hadn't talked about work or anything. And so one of my buddies said to me, Joe, what do you do for a living? I said, well, since I'm good in small doses, I have careers in parallel. I said, I'm a scientist and a manager for the federal government. I'm a college professor, and I work as a counselor at a hospital for the mentally ill. And that buddy says, that's it, that's it. I said, what's it? What are you talking about? He said, that's why you're not as crazy as the rest of us. You've been getting free therapy all these years. I never thought of it that way, but anyhow. Please support the Belmont Memorial for Veterans.
As they say these days, I say it sincerely, thank you for your service, my friend, okay?
Oh, yes.
Okay.